The desire to quit working decades early is the focus of a growing movement, mostly among millennials, called FIRE. Is it actually retirement, or is it just stepping down from an incredibly chaotic, hard-paced job into one that maybe you can take your time with a little more?
In the past few years, the concept of FIRE, or financial independence, retire early, has caught on like, well, wildfire. The concept is simple. Save enough money to become financially independent and retire. Every generation has its FIRE adherents, but millennials in particular have really gravitated towards the movement. It's hard to get exact numbers of how many people are doing FIRE, but it has become a personal finance trend.
Essentially, the FIRE movement argues that you should be saving a significant portion of your income, 25%, 50%, 70%.
There's no one way to do FIRE. How much you earn and how much you save will affect the amount of time it takes for you to retire. For some people, it can take years. For others, it may take decades. The general consensus is that you should save about 50% of your paycheck, which can be very difficult.
I think we are chronic undersavers in this country. I've also looked at the budgets of enough individuals to know that there is wiggle room in pretty much every budget.
In theory, FIRE sounds amazing. Sacrifice a little bit of your quality of life now so you can retire into the lap of luxury a few years later. At least that's how it appears on social media, where lots of FIRE participants are posting with hashtags like van life, luxury, travel, and other envy-inducing updates. But what does it actually mean to retire in your 40s, 30s, or even 20s? Is it really possible? And, most importantly, what do you do with your time once you're retired? Grant Sabatier was an early FIRE devotee. Over 5 years, he saved enough to become a millionaire. He's since written a book and founded the Financial Freedom Summit.
So I decided to pursue financial independence when I was 24 years old, and I was living back home with my parents, and I was completely broke. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Not only had I not saved any money, but I was actually in debt. And I thought, what is money? Can I figure this thing out? I figured out, based on some basic math, that my savings rate was more important than even how much money I was making. And so I was trying to save as much as I could. I was saving between 60 and 80% of my income during this period. You need approximately 25 times your expected annual expenses saved in order to last you for the rest of your life. The biggest challenge once I got on this financial independence path was actually to choose to live my life differently than the other people in my life. And so my friends were all going out, they were spending a ton of money. I lived in a crappy apartment, I drove a crappy car. Ultimately, FIRE to me, it simply means living life on your own terms. It's a Tuesday, as we're filming this, I woke up and read a philosophy book all morning while most of New York City was commuting to their office.
Personally, I commute about 40 minutes each day between Queens and Midtown Manhattan, and the idea of getting out of the rat race is definitely intriguing, but Grant's just one dude. What do other people have to say about it? We decided to visit Fincon, one of the biggest personal finance conferences in the country, to ask professionals what they thought about FIRE.
My name is Ramit Sethi. I'm the author of the New York Times best-selling book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
My name is Benjamin Brandt. I'm a certified financial planner.
Hi, I'm Joseph Cochran.
And I'm Tasha Cochran, and we teach people how to build wealth and enjoy life along the way.
My name is Jeff Rose. I'm a certified financial planner.
Hey, I'm Talent.
And I'm Ty, and we're from hisandhermoney.com.
My name is Corlin Cofield. I own the firm Cofield Advisors, which is financial planning for entrepreneurs.
I'll tell you what I like about the FIRE movement. I love anything that gets Americans to save more money. I think it's amazing. But I will also tell you I have some mixed feelings about the FIRE community as well. You'll often see this question, what are you going to do when you retire? And one of the most common answers, sleep. That is not a healthy answer. You can find a different job. You can become an entrepreneur. There's so many things. But to build an entire life around some Excel spreadsheet cell, saying cell E6, that's my break-even point, I think that's unhealthy.
I really like the financial independence part. I think that's extremely important. Sometimes these things are out of our control. So the financial independence part is really important. The retire early, that's not so much the part I agree with. So if you don't like your job now, I think you have two choices. I think you have the choice of hating your life and saving 70% of your income so that you can retire early, or you can take that exact amount of energy and dedicate that into reinvesting into yourself, getting that next designation, making yourself extremely valuable to the next employer so that you can craft a lifestyle that you don't need to retire from.
So there are a lot of aspects about the FIRE movement that I admire, that I appreciate. I love the idea of being financially independent, but I also know that I like to go on trips with my family. I like to buy nice things.
My only caveat with it is that I don't think anybody should be pushing for a day where they don't have to do anything anymore. Instead of chasing the FIRE movement, I would say chase your passions, because it'll lead you to a life where you're never working a day in your life.
We've been given the fact that retirement age is 65 years and older. But if there's a way that you can bring that age down and you can put yourself in the driver's seat of your financial situation, you should absolutely do it.
We really encourage you to look at your job as a way to be fulfilled. Find work that you love, that pays you an income that allows you to live at the lifestyle you want and save for the lifestyle you want when you're ready to retire. And then you don't have to worry about trying to escape your 9-to-5 so you can live out years of your life in FIRE.
When you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be so excited that you saved all this pile of money. You're going to remember all the things that you did with your kids, your family, your friends.
No matter how prepared you think you are, there's always going to be surprises. Allie and Matt Owen are the founders of Owen Your Future and they're longtime FIRE adherents. They found this out the hard way recently when they invested in real estate.
We kind of found the FIRE movement and started looking at how we could retire early. Real estate was one of those things that kind of popped onto my radar. This particular house was one that was listed on the MLS. I emailed the guy who owned it. We couldn't come to terms on a price, but the guy had just been sitting on it for a while. So somehow the topic came up of partnering on the deal.
So the terms of it was we would lend him $60,000 and in 6 months he would give us $75,000. So basically we would help him to finance the renovations. Unfortunately, after 6 months, we didn't get our money back.
We really got in trouble because we trusted someone who was more experienced than us and thought that, oh, because they've done this a bunch of times before, like they'll be a good partner to partner with. And that didn't end up being the case.
It's hard. Like, you know, I wish it was more talked about, like burnout on your FI journey.
We decided to go back to work mainly because we wanted a little bit more financial stability. Since we weren't quite at our FI number, like we couldn't sustain our lifestyle on that forever.
Matt and I are both high achieving people, and so coming from making really high salaries and being high achievers, it was actually really tough for us to go and kind of slow down for a while and put some of our goals on hold.
You get this idea in your mind of how it's going to be, and you don't know until you actually do it.
Yeah.
And what about the common criticism that FIRE is only for people who come from privilege? Or, as Grant put it,
I think another misconception is that it's just for white guys in tech. Back in 2010 when I started this and started going through this process, there weren't that many people. It was a bunch of white guys in a lot of cases. So I'm happy to see that it's so much more diverse. And that there's families, there's people with kids, there's people who are living on $30,000 a year, there's people who are living on $10,000 a year.
Kristy, Shen, and Bryce Leung, authors of Quit Like a Millionaire, agree that FIRE isn't just for the privileged anymore.
So I think you absolutely do not need privilege to become financially independent. It helps, it makes it a lot easier, but my personal story, I didn't actually grow up with privilege. I grew up in a rural city in China, and at one point my parents and I were living on 44 cents a day. Once you grow up in poverty, you never ever want to be poor again.
The reason why FIRE has resonated with so many people, especially millennials, is that millennials and are constantly maligned in the media about being lazy or flighty or
disloyal to their company. And what the media kind of misses is that we're not like that because we want to be like that. We're like that because that's what the job market is now. Over the past 30, 40 years, workers' rights have been eroded constantly to the point where, you know, unions and pensions are not really that common anymore. Full-time jobs are now starting to turn to contract work, and even now contract work is now turning into the gig economy. The old, you know, boomer advice of buying a house, working for one company and waiting for the company to take care of you when you're old, that social contract has been broken, and as a result it doesn't make sense anymore. When you become financially independent, you no longer depend on anybody for your income.
I think FIRE is the new rule book of money, and that's what's going to save us, because we can't wait for companies or governments to come save us. They're just not available anymore.
So should you try to do FIRE? The general consensus is that financial independence is an excellent goal to strive for, but the idea of retiring early can be a bit of a misnomer. In truth, it should be called FICC, or Financial Independence Change Careers. Doesn't really have the same ring to it, though.
People, when they think about financial independence, retire early, they think that retire early is mandatory. And what really ends up happening is there's so many people retiring young in this movement, and the thing is you end up going on the beach drinking a margarita for 6 months, but then it gets boring and you want to do something else. So people end up doing a lot of passion projects, but they don't do it out of, you know, necessity for money. They do it because they love to do it. For example, one of the things we ended up doing, which is writing a book, is not something we set out to do, but I never would have been able to make a living from writing a book when I was working.
Finding ways to save more money is always a smart goal, and making sure you have enough for retirement is also a no-brainer. If you're able to take it a step further and save aggressively, that's great. Ultimately, though, the majority of people we talk to advocated finding balance. It can be easy to focus solely on saving money at the expense of spending time with friends and family and partaking in the activities you enjoy.
I was spending literally like 16 to 18 hours a day every day for 5 years. I only took a few days off total. So I was either reading about money or going out and trying to make more money or save more money. It's not a quality of life that I would recommend for anyone.
Depending on your situation, it can take years or even decades to reach financial independence. Researching other people's stories is great for inspiration, but remember that everyone's situation is different.
For a lot of people who start thinking about money, it becomes easy to focus on a number. If I have this much in savings, if I have $1 million, if I have a 34% savings rate, I made it. But what you will find eventually is at a certain point, you won the game. You already have your savings rate. You know exactly when you're going to have $1 million or $5 million or whatever your target number is. At that point, it's time to turn the page. It's time to go to chapter 2. And that's less about a number in a spreadsheet, and it's actually more about creating your rich life.
Student loans continue to rise, housing costs are up, wages are stagnant, and the cost of living continues to go up. These big structural issues affect all of us, and taking charge of your finances is a great way to wrestle back some control. Just be sure it doesn't take over your life.